Hi, I'm Nick Quincy and welcome to the podcast. I've got a special guest today from AWS, David Elliott, and I'm just going to ask him to introduce himself. David, over to you.
Hi Nick. So I'm David Elliott and I'm the Director of Solution Architecture for AWS UK and Ireland.
Perfect. So what does that mean? That sounds very fancy.
I suppose it's always a difficult role to describe actually because it means different things to different people. And the role of the solution architect, so all the folks in my team, is one of working with customers or clients, you might say, and helping them understand how they can come up with solutions using our technology to business problems they might have. But on top of that, it's also about helping them learn about cloud and associated services there, inspiring them maybe to take 2 steps forward instead of 1, and maybe thinking a little bit about looking around corners and inventing on their behalf as well. And then there's another little bit of the role, which is actually acting as their antenna internally within AWS, so representing the customer within AWS and making sure that their needs are being addressed and looked at for future developments and other exciting technologies.
Oh, that's great. So like really interesting, if they come across something that doesn't exist, you can kind of help them with that invention back into AWS.
So we always think that customers are the most important bit of our business, of course. We're famously having a mission that says we want to be the Earth's most customer-obsessed organisation. And so how can we do that properly unless we're listening to our customers and finding ways of feeding that back into the organisation and trying to surprise and delight them on a daily or weekly basis.
Yes, and thank you for coming, because I know when we talked, you've touched on it already, it's the culture at AWS. We kind of wanted to get a little bit more under the covers of in terms of what that means. But my first question is really, what drew you to working at AWS?
Well, I've been there quite a long time compared to many. So I've just actually had my 11-year anniversary.
Wow.
So that's a pretty good stint at Amazon, right? But actually, I used to work in a variety of different organisations, mostly focused around data and analytics. It's something that's always been exciting to me. And I had a particular project at one place I was working where it was going to take about 6 to 7 months to get a load of hardware, install that in the on-premises data centre, and then a load of delivery work and so on. And someone suggested to me and said, David, why don't you have a look at AWS? I thought, oh, okay, what's this here? Anyway, to cut a long story short, we were able to deliver that project in about 10 days with an exception to use AWS and at a cost of about $8.97 instead of $30,000.
Wow.
And so for that mind-blowing moment, I just knew I had to go and work at AWS and find out more and get involved myself.
And so how did you end up there? Did you apply? Did you look?
Yeah, well, fortunately, I had a friend who worked there and he said, right, here's how you apply, go and have a chat with these people, send your CV in and so on. And so I went through the process and then ended up working there. And I guess the rest is history. Lots of different roles over that time, but always within solution architecture, covering things from I led the financial services team at one point, the enterprise team, and now I lead the broader function in the UK and Ireland.
Amazing. And we'll probably come back to that process you alluded to in terms of the hiring process, because I know that that's quite peculiar, shall we say, in terms of AWS. But I wanted to go back to that culture. Can you maybe give us an overview, because Amazon and AWS are known for this kind of unusual, peculiar culture. Can you maybe give us a bit of an overview of what that looks like from your perspective?
Yeah, okay, sure. So I think the first thing is something I've already mentioned. So there's a bold mission statement for the whole of the Amazon group, which is to be the Earth's most customer-obsessed organisation. And it's interesting because that doesn't refer to any particular products or services or technologies. There's nothing about Amazon retail or any of the other members of the group advertising, video. It's just actually we all want to fundamentally try and do the best we can for customers in the long term. And from that come a variety of different approaches and techniques and mechanisms, and the DNA of the company, I suppose, if you will, is built around that core concept. And actually, if we think about the DNA of the organisation, we have something internally which is pretty well known, but we have our leadership principles, and leadership principles are divided up into a number of different category areas. And I suppose at a high level, if you think about it, they're there to help aid decision-making processes. I'm sure you know yourself that every day is a whole series of decisions and trade-offs and deciding what to do. And so we have things like customer obsession, dive deep, thinking big, deliver results. And some of those have a natural tension in them. But instead of having extensive rules and regulations, processes and procedures, we tend to use mental models, tenets, and things to help people make the best decision that they can in the particular circumstance they have. And then around that, there's a whole plethora of other supporting processes and mechanisms and things as well, like our famous PR FAQ process, our working backwards process, and so on. But we can talk about those if you like.
You mentioned tenants earlier. Could you maybe dive deeper on that for us and explain what they are and when they're used?
Sure. So a tenant is also something that can help make a decision. And what you'll find probably is that most organisations or functions or groups, and it depends on the level, that whether they're required or not, but there might be problem situations, or there might be a position where you're trying to decide whether to go one way or another. So let's say that you had a path ahead of you and you could go left or you could go right. Well, a tenet would be something that says, in our situation, we would normally tend to go right unless there's something meaningful that tells us to go left.
Okay.
That's very abstract as an example, but these are things that then help you decide and move quickly rather than having to escalate to management, rather than having to seek support for your decision. And that helps us move quickly, because we believe at Amazon that speed is a really important part of business. And so anything that we can put in place to help lower decision-making, devolve decision-making in the organisation, and enable and empower people at the lowest possible level to be able to move quickly is really important. And that's what tenets are about mostly.
So kind of keeping that speed within the business, that bias for action.
And keeping people aligned around how, as a team, we like to think about things and where the importance lies and so on.
Excellent. Thank you very much for explaining that. Not everybody, a lot of people have heard about the writing culture at AWS. I work in a consultancy. We use a lot of PowerPoint. I have worked at AWS. Can you maybe explain what that looks like for you? Like what is the writing culture and what does that give you?
So the writing culture means that we do tend to use a lot less PowerPoint internally, for sure. And actually, there are a number of artifacts that we might have. So people refer to things like a 1-pager, a 2-pager, a 6-pager, and a PR FAQ document, or a press release, and frequently asked questions. And the idea is, I think, if you have a PowerPoint, it's often open to interpretation by the audience. It's not always obvious what the message is that you're trying to convey. And equally, in a meeting, if you're sharing information with a PowerPoint, not everybody might have the supporting data that comes behind those nice looking slides. But if you spend time thinking about how to assemble a document with appendices, data points, and thinking really carefully about the clarity of the message, then if everybody is taking time to read that document at the start of a meeting, everybody is at the same position, being informed about the same level. And so then you can move straight on to discussing the pros and cons, the benefits of the topic in question. And of course, that document is then transferable, so it can be passed and shared with others to bring other people up to the same level of being informed as well.
So it kind of goes back to that speed of decision making as well, if everybody's kind of getting the same content, the same information.
It does a little bit, but also I think it's trying to avoid diving straight into action necessarily. Yeah. Because a lot of the thinking is done up front. And that's actually an interesting part of the press release frequently asked questions process, where we often, if we have an idea for a new service or maybe a new initiative or whatever it might be, then by putting a lot of thought into what would that look like when it was launched. And so the idea is you write a press release and say, today, Nick and David are pleased to announce that we're releasing the new service that does X, Y, Z, and then it gives you an idea of like what that would feel like to a customer who is then seeing this announcement about a new product, a new service. And the frequently asked questions will address things like what's the benefit to the customer, what might they be surprised about, what they might expect, and so on. And at that point, there's been no development, no investment into building something, but you're really trying to crystallize down onto the maximum benefit for the customer.
And I think it's that crystallizing it down as well that helps everybody in the room be on the same page. One of my observations was, when you're a PowerPoint, people ask questions, so you kind of get diverted from what the end game is. Whereas I think with the writing culture, you get to the end of the document before anybody's discussing it, so everybody has the full picture, which is helpful.
It also has the side benefit of it often goes through a few reviews first, which mean that you've actually benefited from everybody else's input as well to really keep the bar high on the quality and the clarity of the document.
It is. What for you is the benefit of working with a partner like PwC?
Well, as with all customer problems, it's not just a single solution and an individual relationship that ends up delivering something. It's really important to work with partners who typically, like PwC, have extensive domain knowledge, extensive experience within a certain area, and extensive experience with stakeholders as well. And so that's broadening out the business engagement that we can have jointly as a tripartite relationship with the customer, with a consultancy like PwC, and with AWS. And the other thing is you often have a significant delivery capability, which is of great benefit to many customers, because doing things in-house themselves is not natural to everybody, and often they don't have the time and the resources to deliver things either. So putting together our technology, our innovation partner, the ability that we've got to try and help stretch and grow customers and think about things in different ways, in the same way that you do from a more business aligned perspective, and coming together as a tripartite works really well.
Yeah, and we've seen that with some clients as well. So it wouldn't be any kind of AWS type question and answer thing if I didn't ask you something about AI. So we've recently done a CEO survey, and one of the results that came back was around 50% of CEOs think that AI is going to impact their profits in the next 12 months. Have you seen evidence of this? And if so, kind of, can you give us some examples?
Well, AI, generative AI, agentic AI, it's, as you know, an incredibly rapidly changing space. And I think practically on a daily basis, we're seeing new releases and services. And I think internally, we like to think that it's going to be more impactful potentially than the arrival of the internet. And so if we think about what does that mean for a business, then actually radically, fundamentally, core business processes are going to be impacted in a variety of different ways. Just as an example, if people are maybe using agents to go and find, let's say, a holiday, they're looking and searching for a holiday, and perhaps they've got agents going and making decisions and looking for the right routes and options, then that might change the relationship between a business and their customer. Maybe for a business themselves, we've seen lots of customers take advantage of driving efficiencies, not inefficiencies, driving efficiencies within things like their customer contact centres, being able to provide a higher level of service, understanding customer sentiment, pulling together data from a variety of sources to have an even more bespoke consumer experience, whilst at the same time reducing the cost to serve, reducing the time to serve, and so on. So across all businesses, really, in all industries, we're at a moment in history where everything needs to be re-examined because the potential is absolutely enormous.
And when you see like people are re-examining it, are you looking at them kind of going, this particular process, let's look at that and apply AI technology to it? Or are you seeing a bit more kind of a step back and go, let's look at the holistic business and figure out where AI can have an impact?
Well, as with everything, it's probably a bit of everything's being covered. There are some organisations that are looking at solving particular pain points and particular problems. Others are thinking about core business processes and taking time to step back and reimagine how that could look in a world of agentic AI, for example. So take, let's say, a procurement process. How would that look if you could reimagine it from the ground up entirely in the modern world? And if you apply that same mindset to business processes across an entire organisation, then very soon you can start to see that there's a huge amount of potential out there, but almost too much sometimes. And so in stepping back, and of course it is important to do so, thinking about things like governance and ethics and management, and regulatory compliance, and all the things actually that you can help customers with, then finding a good use case and being able to come up with a way of proving the benefit and the ROI. It's the same as with most technology projects, that you probably want to find something meaningful that demonstrates benefit, but at the same time thinking about the broader picture.
Yeah, and we're like looking forward to seeing where this goes, as you said, like if it's more disruptive than the internet, who knows what's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. My last question is, we've talked about that innovation that we kind of do together in conjunction with AWS. Have you got any advice for anybody that's watching about, where to start on that innovation journey?
Well, I think it's easy to get distracted by particular technology sometimes. As a technologist, I know that as much as anyone, but really thinking about what are the problems you're trying to solve, qualify down on what the customer experience is going to look like, and working backwards from how you can improve the customer experience, how you can make life better for a particular business process, a particular journey, then that's a really important part of the innovation process, because it keeps you grounded and focused on the outcomes for the business and for your customer, and the rest will naturally follow.
Okay, amazing. Thank you very much, David. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Likewise.
Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you again.